For today's conversation, I wanted to welcome a good friend of mine, Helen Rigby, who is also an actor, a writer, public speaker. What else? We've just discovered you're an expert in horticulture.
Yeah.
And a comedian.
A comedian.
Basically ticks every box. And
I'm genuinely, oh, sorry, I'm putting in already. I just got it on myself.
And we've also, I mean, one of the reasons I brought her on, apart from all the things I've just listed, is we're both Jungian coaches. And we've talked today about imposter syndrome. But go on, Helen, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I'm so glad we're talking about imposter syndrome, because I was getting nerves and feeling a little bit sick of you listing all the things. I'm like, writer, oh God, I'm going to have to get my book out that I've not written yet. It's not finished. Acting, what have you done? I'm like, oh God, I've actually got sweaty palms. I'm so glad to talk about this topic.
So you're feeling like an imposter already, and we haven't
already. I hope there's a solution at the end of it. And I end up feeling better about myself.
So anyway, this is going to be an interesting conversation because we've already had a few technical challenges before we started.
Yeah, I've got the mic. I'm not even speaking into the mic, but I've got one.
But it looks good. That's all that matters. It's all about appearance.
Exactly. It's all about looking the part, isn't it? I've turned up looking like an actress.
So back to imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
When I was doing some research, this term was coined in 1978, which was before I was even thought of.
Yeah, way before.
Way before I was even thought of. So, but interesting that it's been around for so long. And sort of, I guess, more broadly, when we think about imposter syndrome, we're thinking about the doubt of abilities and talents and skills, and feeling a bit like a fraud, essentially, like, who am I to be here? I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. And one article I found kind of listed 9 telltale signs. And when I was reading it, I was thinking, I've probably personally got most of these myself.
Take them all. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was from Inc. magazine. So we're just going to go through the 9 telltale signs, and we can
like this
about it. And also perhaps from your own experiences, which ones you think are strongest for you.
Yeah.
I can share. There's definitely one for me that's the strongest. So I'm a fake and I'm going to be found out. That's one.
Right. Do we say yes or no?
It's like a quiz.
Well, like that. What are the rules? I need to know the rules.
Okay. Yes. Just say yes or no. Yeah. Let's.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that a yes?
Yeah, like I feel like the word fake is really horrible though, isn't it? I think more of like, I'm a fraud. I feel like I'm going to get exposed.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I didn't write the language of this, but yeah,
I know. Okay. It's already triggering me, this. We should write our own.
We should. Well, we can do that after this, because you're a writer, so we could definitely do that.
I'll just whip something up after.
So I'm just lucky. And that I think is something we hear quite a lot, that say, oh, well, you know, someone just happened to phone me, or I just happened to have this appear on my lap. That's a big one.
Yeah.
If I can do it, anyone can. So kind of minimizing our...
Oh, I see. Yes, definitely. So and I think that's something of a way to play down what you've done as well. Like, this thing, oh God, no, anyone can do this.
Yes. I would say, knowing you a little bit, that would be one that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for putting that politely.
I'm not really... I don't really know much about horticulture.
How are your hedges getting on? Anyway, go on.
Now, this is one I think was strongest for me.
Right.
I had a lot of help. So I'm uncomfortable with the praise on a sort of spotlight of praise. Yeah. I definitely feel this myself, particularly around music. I'm always saying, oh, but all these people help me. I have this person and this person.
I see. Yeah. Then just taking credit for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
So that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
I had connections, which I think is also sort of similar to I just got lucky, but you kind of know people and you say, well, you know, I only got this because of that person.
God, it really is about minimizing it, isn't it? Minimizing what you've done.
Yes. Yes. People are just being nice. I think that's one.
Oh God, yes. Oh my God.
This is what I mean. I mean, tick, 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 tick down most of these. This is another one, interestingly. Failure is not an option. So there's a pressure to avoid failure at any cost.
I don't understand that one. Failure, like maybe the fear of failure.
Yes.
So you will not even show failure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that idea of failure is so repulsive to you.
Yeah.
It's just something I have to avoid at all costs. Which then
so it's not, it's
compounds
not even an option.
That fear of, you know, it compounds all those thoughts of I'm an imposter.
Yeah.
Using minimizing language, which we've already kind of talked about, but minimizing what you do and how you do it. And finally, discrediting achievements, and you'll say things like, well, I just made it up as I went along. I say that too.
God, yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing.
It really is, throwing away, and the pressure then of expectations then of people expecting you to be good at something, and then you can fail. Yes.
Because I almost think, because I almost think when there's a sort of discredit of achievements, if you don't do very well, then you can say, oh, well, I made it up anyway. It's almost like a defense thing. Yes.
You've not put your heart and soul into it. So it doesn't really matter. It's actually always better, this is in my assumption, to be the underdog, isn't it? Because then no one's got any expectations of what you're going to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, God.
So talking about those 9, what has been your experiences? Because we're really, I suppose, the reason I'm talking to you is because you're also a sort of artist, creator in that kind of artistic world.
Yeah. Sweating again, getting nervous again. Yeah, that's me. All of them.
What has been your experience of this to date?
Do you know, I think acting for me has just been all about the validation. Like, I think until I did this kind of Jungian work, it was all about kind of what job am I going to feel like I'm a successful I was going to say artist and actor. What job is going to make me look like I'm successful? And you know, even whilst I was training, it was almost like I was waiting for the teacher to say, you're a brilliant actor now, you can go on your way. So it's always that kind of external validation to be like, right, I'm an actor now, I'm just acting, this is me, like always waiting for that tick list of like, this is who you are.
So in your career then, were you, I presume things like reviews or comments, criticisms, feedback from people, whether it was producers or audience members, or because I know for me, whenever I did a show, I would always be at the end when people would come up to you or they'd email you afterwards. And I was always quite anxious about opening emails or when people came up to me and I'm like, what are they going to say? And of course, people aren't going to be probably horrible to your face, but there's still that, you know, that fear. So
and I think that feedback ends up, you know, until you kind of do this work and realize where it comes from, it's like that feedback kind of becomes your navigation. Because you're navigating to what works for the audience. So you're like, that didn't work. And I guess like a good thing, I'd never do stand-up comedy. God, it must be terrifying. But I guess being a stand-up comedian, you're actually listening to the audience. They laughed at that joke worked. They didn't laugh at that didn't, throw it out. And I guess that's like being an artist. If you're just completely reliant on that feedback, you're just navigating through what fits, than it being like, this is my true passion, this is what I want to do, this is my pure bliss, I'm enjoying myself, I feel connected, and that's what's important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess from a sort of Jungian perspective, so we have probably a slightly different angle on this idea of imposter syndrome, because there are so many articles on the internet about this, and we both found a couple. And I think often it's about trying to make the ego feel better when dealing with imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I think most of the articles I found, apart from the Jungian stuff, was how to get rid of it.
Yes, exactly.
Which is just like, it's just easing the ego, isn't it?
It's just
it.
Exactly. And it doesn't go anywhere. And I think this is the key part for me, that when you're driven by outward success or outward achievement or outward praise or outward validation, it will never be enough.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah,
all the amazing reviews in the world, you could get a BAFTA, an Oscar, and then it'd be, okay, now I need another BAFTA or Oscar. Now I need to sell out another show. Now I need to sell another record. The bar just simply moves.
And it's I was reading like the top 25 actors who suffer with, or who said they've suffered with imposter syndrome. And it's really high profile actors, you know, who've won Oscars, who've won BAFTAs, but then that added the pressure of, oh God, now I'm an Oscar winning actress. Like, all my performances are going to have to be Oscar winning level.
Yes.
You know, the pressure of that. And it's like you say, it's like whenever I've done something, I'm like, right, I'll feel like once I've done this, I'll feel validated that I'm an established actor. But that the novelty of that wears off, and you're like, right, I need the next job that's higher.
That's right. And I think it's one of the challenges of being a creative, whether that's in acting or writing or singing or whatever you do, dancing. I remember listening to an interview with Elizabeth Gilbert that wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and that book was incredibly successful, and obviously a film was made from it. And I remember her talking about the next book, and she had so much fear that it wasn't going to actually be as good, because she'd almost been put on this massive pedestal after the first book. And I think that that's the danger with all of this. When we're seeking external validation, it almost kind of cripples our creativity and
our freedom of creativity as well, isn't it? Then it's like, what is actually coming up.
And I think for me personally, that kept me musically stuck for many years, because I was always singing, but I was always singing in situations where I wasn't in the limelight. It wasn't under my name. I was part of the group, or I was in a, you know, so I was singing lead, but it wasn't like my show or my band. I would be a singer as part of something else.
So you had an excuse as well then.
So I could hide behind someone else's band name or show name. And then if it wasn't very good and people didn't like him, like, well, I didn't, you know, I just turned up and sang. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah, it wasn't. Oh my God, that's so true. That's like acting as well, because you're like, if you're doing a play or something, you're like, oh, well, the writing wasn't that great. That's why I didn't do well. When really, you know, your commitment as an artist is to commit to that writing, commit to that character, to commit to being in that moment and being present. There's no excuses.
No, exactly. And that's why I think it's, I mean, for me, like writing my own music and singing, and probably for you, like writing and acting your own stuff.
Oh God,
the most vulnerable place to be, because you've got nothing to hide behind now.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I didn't write the song, I didn't write the lyrics, you know, it wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
You know, literally, you are fully responsible for everything.
And you know, and you know, people that do this, I'm seeing a lot of comedians at the minute writing their own sketches and then putting them automatically up to Instagram and Twitter, which is such a great way now of getting the work and getting seen. But the amount of pressure that, you know, how brave they are to put their stuff up, aren't they? Because we just take it for granted that it's like, well, they know they're good, they know they're funny, but it takes an enormous amount of bravery, doesn't it, to put your stuff out there?
Absolutely. So from a Jungian perspective, at least, and this is what we're talking about this from today, because I think it's a very empowering way of looking at imposter syndrome. And it's certainly there is no doubt if I hadn't have done this type of work, I would be writing and releasing my own music, because it's terrifying.
Yes.
If you are in that ego place. So Jung's idea of the psyche was, you know, we all have an ego, which essentially is our way of surviving and fitting in the world. And it's all about survival. It's all about what will, you know, people will like me. I don't want to upset people. I don't want to, you know, trying to avoid criticism. And it's all about trying to emotionally and physically survive in the world, essentially the ego. And then we have a persona, which is that kind of outward facing mask we wear in the world. And that will vary, you know, depending on who you're with, but essentially there's similarities, but we all have slightly different masks depending on what we're doing. And we decide what is acceptable and what's going to help us survive, and that goes into that persona. And then whatever doesn't fit goes into the shadow. And what doesn't fit that persona is not what we're conscious of. So we're not even always aware. Well, we're not aware what's in the shadow by definition. It's not conscious to us. So all of these feelings that we have and these thoughts around imposter syndrome are thoughts of the ego. It's all ego chatter. And that's why you can't fix it, because I kind of describe the ego like a leaky bucket. You can keep stuff in, but it's
still going to get exposed, isn't it?
You can tell yourself, you know, you can put positive affirmations up, you can put a vision board up, you can say, I am powerful, I am amazing.
You can do that confidence kind of building, can't you? But I'm guessing that kind of vulnerability will just start shrinking and feel more painful to feel then, because that kind of vulnerability will feel a massive failure, and you're like, don't feel that, because I need to feel this confident exterior. So we get very attached to playing this role that I have to kind of like one of the things I said, failure is not an option. So my persona is I've got to be successful all the time. I've got to look successful all the time. So therefore I can't do anything where I might fail, where I might look stupid, get shamed, get ridiculed, whatever. And how boring is that? Imagine like I mean, I've done it. I've been such a prisoner of perfectionism. I've been like, oh God, like just keep the face of like having it all together. But it's really painful, isn't it? There's no fun in it. There is no fun, no creativity in it, because it's just repeating what has worked in the past. Yes,
absolutely. And what the ego really fears, interestingly, is success, is abundance. So it feeds us all these stories of, you're going to look stupid if you do that, you're not good enough to do that, who do you think you are? I mean, what else do we have on here? You know,
there's loads of other people who could do the job better.
Because then it keeps us small, it keeps us safe. And actually what it really fears is us being successful, because that's an unknown quantity. We know what it's like to kind of, you know, just coast through life and sort of live under fly under the radar. That's a kind of safe place for most of us to be. Actually putting yourself out there where you could really allow and experience real kind of abundance and success is terrifying for most of us.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not, we think we're afraid of not getting what we want, but we're actually more afraid of getting what we want, because then we have to like stand by it, don't we, and outlive it. And it's interesting, because I know when I had a session with you doing my vocal voice lessons, really
she told me before we started she hadn't done her voice warm up.
No,
not a very good student.
I'm gonna do it every day apart from just today. But I remember you asking me, like, you know, with it, because what goes into the shadow often is projected outside of us and then triggers us. So people who were such show off really triggered me. So I was like, oh God, just demanding attention. Like, it was such a trigger for me. And I remember you saying, that's really interesting that you've chosen acting as a career when it's mainly based about being on stage and being the center of attention. And I really pushed that into my shadow, because I feared it, of being demanding that kind of center of attention and being really egotistical.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were kind of holding yourself back massively.
I wanted to compromise. I wanted to be the artist that's like, I don't know, like really quiet and just listens and, you know, is like really under the radar. And it's like, I wonder why you're not getting seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the important thing with all of this then is when we identify with these thoughts, we're really identifying with the ego. And the problem is that most of us, until we become more aware, think that that is who we are. So this is me. This is just the way I am. I just think like this. I just have these thoughts. That's just me. And, you know, I was this person for a long time. I just thought, I mean, I remember saying to people, well, I'm just not a performer. It's not who I am. It's not in my makeup. But that was my ego telling me I'm not a performer. Because of course and it's interesting you talked about that sort of being the center of attention, because in my mind, being a performer meant I had to be, you know, like really outrageous. I had to walk around half naked and I had to swear like a sort of Amy Winehouse, like come on stage half drunk and or be really sort of like a Miley Cyrus and twerking, being quite sexual and provocative. And I just thought that I don't want to be that. And if that's what being a performer means, I'm not a performer. So I really shut that part of myself down for a long time, even though I had this huge passion for singing.
That's so interesting.
And then I sort of, through this work, I realized, well, I don't have to reject the whole performer persona. I can actually create my own performer persona, and I don't have to go on stage half drunk and half naked. I can actually be who I truly am. And actually then I'm going to connect with people on a much deeper level because I'm being authentic.
It's your truth, isn't it? And it's so interesting as well, because it's like you're going to almost give permission to other people that might have seen, you know, we project onto what we think is an artist and we're like, oh, but I'm not that. And then someone's going to see you and be like, oh, but I can relate to her, so I can be a singer as well. Like, it's, you know, we have to start with the change in ourselves, don't we? And the bravery in ourselves.
That's right. And I think in my mind, I thought, well, if I'm not this kind of outrageous person on stage, I won't be successful. I thought that's what people wanted. Which is ridiculous.
There's a confidence thing as well, isn't it? It's like, if I don't feel confident, I shouldn't really be doing this. Because it's almost like a fake myth that you should just know you're on stage and you should just know, and you probably do, but you're nervous because you're on stage and people are staring at you.
Definitely
normal.
Absolutely. And that I think is a big part of it. I mean, we're not saying get rid of the ego, we're saying don't identify with it as being who you are.
Don't over identify with it.
That's right, because having an ego means, I mean, we need an ego, otherwise we die. I mean, we need that keeps us alive. But when we over identify with it, it really, really holds us back, and it really, really limits us from our full and our full possibility. And so I think for me, the big turning point with this work for me was this idea that I'm not the ego, that those thoughts are who I am. And there's a much deeper, much more powerful part of myself that really, and it's interesting, it's a, I mean, in my experience anyway, it's this much bigger, more powerful part of ourselves, but it has the smaller voice. The ego is the sort of weaker, smaller part of ourselves, really, but that seems to have the bigger voice in our head, the voice that we really identify with, but it's actually a tiny part of who we are. And I think that's why learning to find sort of stillness and meditation and being in nature and all of those things helps us to connect to that small voice, which actually really allows us to access this powerful part of ourselves. And so it's this is the place that, in my experience at least, we have to connect to truly allow ourselves to put ourselves out there creatively.
Because
I
think
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say quickly. So then these thoughts, these imposter thoughts,
yeah,
we don't push them away, but we know what they are. We're like, okay, that's just my ego chatting away.
Yeah.
It's trying to stop me. It's trying to keep me safe. But I don't have to believe this, because I know that there's this deeper, more powerful part of myself that is really wanting me to fully express myself. And that was the thing for me, like me writing my own music and singing was what I was nearly in tears when I first recorded my first song.
Oh, really?
Such an emotional experience.
I'm not surprised. I mean, it's so, it's so raw. It comes from like a real deep truth from your experience and what you've gone to. And I think so many people, I know I related to it on such a deep level because of, the connection of losing a parent, if you don't mind me saying that. No. But I connected on such a deep level. And I think that's the beauty of art, in the fact that that's where the connection comes from, isn't it?
Absolutely. So what's been your experience then through as an actor, as a writer, all the things that you're doing? And I know now you've got this podcast coming out soon, and so all of these things that you're doing, how has the sort of this Jungian slant on imposter syndrome, let's say, this more, I would say, a more empowered way of looking at it kind of help you as an artist?
It's actually been really exciting, because it felt like for a long time, it's like, I've always wanted to be an actress, but it kind of came from an ego sense of what I saw an actress to be. So I'm constantly trying to mimic what other people that I see as successful are doing in myself. And it was painful. It's like, it just didn't sit well with me. And I think there was just always this seed inside of me that's like, I just have this passion, but I've not found my way of doing it yet. And I guess, I've recently started sharing my own personal story, and that has made me braver as an artist, because it was almost like I was playing roles in acting, but being like, don't you dare look at me. I'm quite happy to jump into a character and experience what this character's experience. But again, there's always a bit of an excuse. It's like, I'm likable, the character's not likable. I could always shift the blame to this character that was external from me. And there was almost like a barrier of like, don't look deep within me, But I think now that I've kind of been speaking about my truth, it's made me braver to go there as an artist, of being okay with being seen in these little parts, having little essences from me, from my truth in these parts. It's like, I don't have to now triple blag, it's like, I am Helen playing a role. Even Helen Rigby is playing a role of being an artist, these personas that we use. Because actually I'm also a qualified accountant, and honestly, like, the different
personas. I did not know that.
Did you not know that?
No,
exactly.
you're the most unlikely accountant.
Exactly. If you want to have, like, if you think of what a persona looks like, it's like,
not you.
Throw it out the window. Exactly. And do you know what, actually, interestingly enough, my first audition after coming back after having cancer was for a cancer patient. And funnily enough, I didn't get the part.
Really?
So I'm like, do I not look like a cancer patient? I'm like, it's really interesting, because whatever label we have an image of what that looks like. And that's all we're playing. We're almost trying to put on the outfit, put on the armor of what an actor looks like, of what an accountant looks like. Interesting. I was on a plane once, and I just felt like being an accountant for the day. It's just what I thought. I was
You're an actor.
I was on a plane, and they were like, "Can you? Do you want a paper?" I thought, yeah, I'll go for the Financial Times. Of course, I will. Like, you can't fake what you enjoy and what you like. I'm like reading this Financial Times, like, really, have you ever done that like concentration phase where you're like, oh, I'm really, really enjoying it? I didn't. Secretly, I'm like, I just want to read like Eat, Pray, Love. It's like, you can't it's like I'm playing the persona of like what an accountant, what a businesswoman would be doing. you know, and I guess now doing this Jungian work, it's given me the freedom of actually just expressing myself as an artist without filters, of just without having to apologize for myself, without being afraid that somebody might say, well, she's not done this work, so she's not an artist. It's like, I am an artist. And however I see the world is through my artist lens.
Yeah.
And I don't need to prove it. It's just, and I get to now, sorry, I'm really going on now, but don't know. But I think before I had this real need to just want to do any acting role just to be an actor. Whereas now I feel so passionately to just be telling stories that I really connect to feel a part of that connection outside, to feel less alone in this world, to suffer less. You know, I feel passionately that that's where I want my acting to come from now.
Yes. And I just wanted to pick up something you said a second ago, which I really resonate with, is, and I think this is something that because I teach singers as well as speakers. Yeah. It's something I hear a lot. It's like people will often say, well, I feel more comfortable singing, playing a role in a song. So I don't know, I'm playing, I don't know, like The Hills Are Alive and The Sound of Music, and I'm just pretending to be someone else sing this.
Yeah.
But I would still argue, and this is what this work has allowed me to do, that even whether you're singing your own music or you're singing someone else's music, and I imagine it's similar with acting as well, but you still have to bring your own.
Yes.
You have to connect with yourself.
Yeah.
So you can pretend, you can get into the role and pretend to be someone, but if you're not connected to that, people don't buy it.
So and it's like, you know, when you look at like the hero's journey for Joseph Campbell, and it's like you realize like there's no original story. There's absolutely no original story that you can think of, but actually the originality comes from that unique person, that unique view, that unique opinion, that unique, the fact that it's never happened before in this moment now, bringing it to that present moment of you being completely connected to the here and now.
Yes. And you cannot fake that. People feel it. They may not be able to put words to it, but you like, and I'm only going to talk from a singing perspective because I don't know much about the acting world, but in terms of singing, we feel it when someone is deeply connected to a song.
Yes. Oh my God, because it moves us. Yeah. We feel it in our body, don't we? Because it releases an emotion inside of us. Yeah. Because if they're connected, you feel that energy of connection.
Yes.
If you can see an actor, a singer or whatever that's in their heads, especially that perfectionism, it cuts you off. It's like you completely disconnect to it.
It does.
And that's the beauty of it. Sorry, I get so passionate about that, but that's the beauty of it, isn't it? I went to see Hamilton at the weekend, and the minute the actor stepped on stage, like it felt like electrifying. Like I just like almost broke down in tears. I mean, it was the first time that we've been back to the theatre since COVID, and it was just, I mean, I'm quoting Hamilton here, but it's to be in the room where it happened. It was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is when I feel most alive.
Yes. And so that takes a vulnerability to it's easy. I say easy. It's easier just to play like step into that persona. I'm just going to be that.
Yes.
But I'm going to be disconnected with myself. I'm just going to play this role.
Yeah.
But when you can bring a part of yourself that, say, for example, as an example, I mean, I entered a competition a couple of years ago now. It feels like a lifetime ago, pre-COVID, and it was an old musical theatre song. I say an old musical theatre song. It was unreleased musical theatre songs that they were looking to create an album from, and they were looking for singers to come in and sing them. And you could pick the one that you wanted to kind of audition with. And I picked one that was about a woman whose mum was dying. And I could totally connect to it.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And it was so interesting. So when I sang it, I remember when I first started practicing it, I couldn't even get through it without crying because I was so connected to it.
Yeah.
And I think this is the thing. I could have sang it and imagined what it would be like to lose someone.
Yes. Yeah. but when you know,
and then it's being willing to go there as well. Like, we've all experienced heartbreak, we've all experienced loss in some shape or form. It's being willing to go there, and it's finding that balance between not going there so much that you can't sing.
It's like in acting, it's not doing method acting of re-traumatizing yourself. Sorry, carrying on.
Just the same thing. So I think that was, and then when I got the feedback, so I sort of won the part, so to speak, and I'm still waiting for this album to come out because COVID has just thrown it off. It's a Broadway album, and so I was singing on this song, but they were like, they were so, they were just like, wow, we just,
that's so beautiful. That's giving me goosebumps thinking about that. Because it's such a beautiful synchronicity, isn't it, that sometimes, you know, we suffer so much, we go through trauma, we go through heartbreak, we go through joyous times as well, but we don't always have the words to express that, do we? And I think when somebody else beautifully puts it and you get that opportunity to express it, it's magical, isn't it? It's like, and it really, like, I could tell when you were talking about that, how alive you were when you were talking about it, because you felt that complete connection.
Yes, absolutely. And so there has to be a vulnerability. And if you're in ego, you can't connect to that vulnerability. You can't connect to that full creative potential, because the ego is anti-vulnerability. It's like terrified of vulnerability. That's dangerous. That's scary, that's a threat. So we have to, what I love about Jung's work is he was actually a very spiritual psychologist, psychiatrist. He believed there was a much deeper part of us, versus we are just a sum total of all our experiences and all the sort of terrible things that have happened, and we have to just try and make our lives a little bit better and get through things as best we can. Jung really believed there was this really deep, powerful part of ourselves that we can connect to through dreams, through visualization, through different ways. And that, I think, when you can connect to that as an artist, you are still going to have these fears, these thoughts,
doubt,
these doubts, but it doesn't stop you.
It doesn't mean don't go down that path. It's like, and I think the good news, if we have good news, but the good news is that, you know, when you do get these ego narratives and these thoughts, it's not a case of how to fix them, how to quiet them. It's an opportunity for you to work on something, for you to grow, and for you to realize something on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And, you know, and we, you know, this is a whole other topic, but kind of what you alluded to when we were working together, you know, look at things that trigger you. I mean, actually, in that list of the imposter syndrome telltale signs, the one that you have the sort of strongest emotional reaction to, start to examine that on a deeper level. That's a really good start.
And how often you do that in your life. I think especially when you said the minimizing, for me, I really still connect to that. Oh, it's just such a safety to just brush something off. That you're not seen as successful, that people don't have expectations of you.
That's right. And then if you don't do very well, you can say, well, I wasn't, you know, I didn't really
care,
trying too hard anyway.
I'd not warmed my voice up properly anyway.
Yes. And that's very interesting, because I used to find I always used to get sick before concerts. And I think unconsciously there was a part of me that was like, if I don't sing very well, then I can just say, but I was sick. Whereas if you're fighting it and you're healthy, I've got no excuse to fall back on if people don't like it. Or like, well, they didn't like it.
It's interesting as well, because it's, you know, I mean, it's important to take care of yourself as well. But, you know, I'm going through something personally in the minute that is, you know, I'm really finding difficult. And there was a part of me is like, right, I'm going to say no to this meeting, you know, but it's like, no, it's quite nice to have this meeting and have this connection and talk about this topic. It's such an interesting topic that I'm like, no, ego, I can take care of myself, but I'm saying yes. And it's just saying yes to things.
Exactly. Totally. So I think really, I suppose the sort of the key message in all of this is we all experience those thoughts. I think everyone does. I think some people might not be as honest about it. They might be better at numbing them and pushing them away, but I think everyone, male and
appearing confident. I think I'll only say this story quickly, but for me, I was working with an actor who I saw as like higher than me, more successful than me. And I was working with him. And before we did our scene, he was like, I feel really nervous. And it really took me by surprise, because I was like, I was pretending I wasn't nervous because I felt like the lower actor in it. Yeah. And I was like, oh God, I can't be exposed as not being a good actress. And he was like, I'm so nervous. And it took me through so many realizations of like, oh wow, like you care. That's why you're nervous. You care about this scene, and that's why you're nervous. No matter what you've done, you care. And then I had another realization of like, when you're on stage, you think the actor is like thinking about what you've done, what your CV is. They're thinking about their own stuff and their own vulnerabilities and their own like insecurities. You know, it's not about you. And I think that is with acting, it's not about you. It's honoring that character and that writing on stage. And that's it. It's not about you, but it is at the same time.
Well, the ego thinks it's all about us, but
it's ego thinks it's all about us.
But in reality, as you say, most of the time people aren't even thinking about you. We're thinking about, what does that person think of me? But they're not.
And they're thinking, they're going through their own little narrative in their heads.
Exactly. What does this person think about me? And certainly I remember, you know, singing on stage, and I would be able to normally see the front row of an audience, and I'd be trying to read their mind. And so I was really bored. I'm thinking, oh my God, they're hating me.
They're bored, need to change it.
I need to do something like strip off or do something like crazy to wake them up. And then at the end it was like, oh, they would come up to me and say, oh my God, that was amazing. And I'm like,
you have no idea, do you?
I'm bored.
But
so interesting that we make so many judgments and assumptions, but most of the time people aren't even thinking about us.
That's how quick our mind works as well. It's like being in chess, isn't it? We're thinking about this moment ahead of us and trying to navigate it so that we avoid it. Yes. But that is how quickly our mind works.
Yes. But coming back to what you just said then, and I think this is also a really important point, and it's something that I know I've struggled with too, is, you know, coming from, I suppose, a home where education was everything. My parents really believed in education, and that's a good one. I mean, education is important. I'm not saying it's not. It's like everything.
Quick school.
Like education was the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And I think what we can fall into again with this whole imposter syndrome is, if I just get another degree, if I just do another course, if I just do another workshop, then I'll
feel like it.
Then I can go on stage. Then I can write my novel. Then I can do this. Then I can do that. And I think you have to be really careful. It's not that you shouldn't get training at all. But where is that desire for training coming from? Is it to express more of yourself and to step into a greater version of yourself?
To get more knowledge.
Or is it to try and appease the ego that's telling you, well, you know, you're a fake and you don't know what you're doing. You can't do it. You need all this help. So and I have definitely fallen into that as well.
I think actors do that as well. There's drama schools, official drama schools, you know, which one have you been to? Where have you trained? And I think, you know, social media especially is breaking that myth now, especially that I was talking about comedians now. They're doing like their sketch shows and they're getting seen. So it doesn't matter what school they went to, where they did their training, because the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in what they're showing.
Exactly.
So we are breaking the myths now of like how the official training should be.
Yes, totally. And I know for me, like musically speaking, you know, I was saying about how I always say, I had a lot of help because I don't have any kind of formal musical education. I don't have a degree in music. I've got a lot of training as a singing teacher and as a singer. But in terms of the sort of musical theory side and all of that, I've sort of had to teach myself, and I work sort of privately with different people. But there was that idea that I can't possibly be a musician unless I've got a degree in music. And that's been a challenge for me as well. So it's just interesting how the mind works. But I think
it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like actually like life experience is probably one of the most crucial things to gain, isn't it? And I mean, especially being an actor, you know, you think it's like, it's great to have like techniques and stuff like that, but actually like being a human and knowing you're a human is a great way to then reenact being a human, It's like having life experiences and traveling and, having these kind of heartbreaks and griefs. It's like, that's what it is to be a human.
That's right. And being able to tap into that and allowing yourself to feel sad, to feel emotional, to feel grief, to feel joy, versus numbing and distracting ourselves, which is what we tend to do. So I think the upshot of all of this conversation is, know that these thoughts are universal. I think we all feel this in different ways, but it's not who you really are.
Yeah,
that's the big thing. There is a deeper, really powerful, not intimate, well, it could be intimate, infinite and intimate parts of ourselves that is really what we want to connect to, because when we connect to that, then it really doesn't matter what anyone else says or thinks, because we are on a path of our own sort of personal growth and our own personal expression. And when we connect to that, it's interesting actually, and I find the more I connect to that, I don't seem to notice criticism anymore. I don't seem to notice people saying horrible things, because but I know what I'm doing is what I'm meant to be doing, and I know what I'm doing is.
And it's your choice if you take that as feedback to say, oh yeah, actually I agree with that, and I might just change this a little, because it's important to get feedback as well at the same time, isn't it? But not to over identify it and rely on it.
Yes, absolutely. Totally. And I think that's been, I actually responded to a post on Instagram the other day. Someone was talking about releasing their own music, and they were scared about, getting people not liking it, and people, criticizing and thinking it was rubbish, whatever. And I wrote, and I just said, the most important thing is that you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing music to try and get validation externally, to try and please other people, probably the same with writing for acting as well, you're always going to be in a state of anxiety, because it's not coming from that true deep place. You're writing to try and get something from other people, versus I'm writing what's in my heart. And that's where I came from. My songs are not necessarily, although having said that, they seem to be really appealing to in the commercial space, which is interesting. But I wasn't writing to try and get everyone to love them. I was writing from my heart.
And there's so much freedom, isn't there, in that? And I think as well, when we go back to like where the imposter syndrome first came from, and that was like the women in the workplace, wasn't it? And so there wasn't like, as much recognition in a woman in high power. So it was more difficult you felt that kind of imposter syndrome because of the lack of people that you identify with. But then it's like, now it's like, well, you can be that person that they say, oh, well, Anushka didn't go to music school or whatever, but look at what she's writing from, look at her music, and people connect to that. I know for us as actors, there's always Liz Smith, who was in the royal family, and her first big breakthrough she was like 49 or something, I think. So our stories is always like, oh, but there was Liz Smith who had the breakthrough. And it's like, you can be that story who was the breakthrough, not through the usual path or the usual age. It's like, you can be that person.
Yes, absolutely. Well, really interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me on. It was such an interesting topic, and I no longer feel like an imposter now.
Oh, don't you? That's good.
I'm going to go and juggle in my dungarees like a true artist would.
Like a true artist. So if you want to follow Helen, you've got a new website, haven't you?
I have, yeah. But all the information is on Instagram, which is at Helen. Oh, you've not asked me, have you? But anyway, it's there we go. At Helen S. Rigby.
At Helen S. Rigby. So I will big her up for her. So she's got a...
Oh God, the imposter syndrome's back. I've learned nothing.
I know. Have you been part of this conversation for the last 30 minutes?
I've just been pretending. I've been playing the persona of someone who's all right with the imposter syndrome.
You have a podcast. When's your first episode coming out?
So we've taken a break over August. So September we're back. So hopefully end of September.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It will be good. So yeah, you can find Helen on Instagram, and
thank you.
Yeah. She does have a website.
So much.
For some reason, she doesn't want to big that one up at the moment.
Because step by step.
Oh dear. Okay, well, lovely to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.